What's he building in there? What's he building in there? We have a right to know.
All right, welcome everyone to Reframing the Narrative. This week we are super excited to have David James Rodriguez on the show, longtime freedom activist and very much into solutions and getting activated, as you've heard us talking about in recent weeks. And without further ado, David, so awesome to see you again. So awesome to have you on the show. Do you just want to do a brief introduction about yourself and what you've been up to
Sure.
lately?
Hey, PJ. Hey, Jay. Good to be with you guys in the audience. Great to be here because you guys are the chosen ones. If you guys haven't realized, the last 5 years, even the last couple years, a lot of changes happening on Earth, and we're all being invited to rise. So I help parents remove their children from the school system. I'm principal of Valor Academy, where I do early high school graduations, homeschool consulting. I run a homeschool leader group on Facebook, and I publish the Underground History of American Education by John Taylor Gatto, and working on a film to expose some of the solutions that we've been talking about. And that's kind of the essence of it right now. You know, we're focusing on intergenerational freedom, realizing that the unrighteous ones have 30-year plans, 50-year plans, 100-year plans, and it's time for the freedom people, the moral people, the righteous people to begin thinking big, playing big, and understand this seems to be what we came here for, and the truth will not be suppressed, and they can do whatever they want to do, but I think the cat's out of the bag. We realize that government is not a legitimate organization. It's based on coercion, intimidation, violence, terrorism, and we're evolving to the next phase of human civilization, society. How do we interact with each other? And that's kind of the essence of it. So there's so much to talk about, and I can share some of the cool things we've been up to, but that's what we're doing right now. So great to be with you both.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're super excited about this conversation, and for background, I met you, David, back in the during the scamdemic, I think in 2020, and you were doing a lot of activism in Santa Cruz, and declaring the beach was open, like that was awesome, like that was one of the best things ever, and some of the things you and your group did with Trader Joe's and like going in unmasked. I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on there or any lessons learned from all of that, but that might be a starting point for getting
Yeah,
things
so when
launched.
the pandemic, scandemic hit, I had already been studying the vaccine agenda since 2015, since I met Brandy Vaughn, and I saw what they were doing in schools. So that was part of my activation to get the kids out. And she told me this in Santa Cruz in 2015. She said they have a pipeline of 300 vaccines that they want to just not vaccinate every children. They want to vaccinate everybody. So when I saw what happened, lockdowns, we knew the masks were just a bridge to the jab. And so me and my buddies got together, another voluntarist friend of mine, and Etienne de la Boissy. We had some meeting, and we called some of our, constitutional friends together and people who have been participating in the Freedom Forum. And we said, hey guys, this is big time. This is the real thing. So yeah, we decided we're going to go exercise our freedoms on the beach. That ended up turning into 70 Saturday bonfires, unpermitted, unregulated. We helped open Santa Cruz beaches and also Carmel beaches as well. Many of these are on video, and this is one of the documentaries that I'm trying to make. I did find an audio guy. We're looking for, I think, an editor, so if there's anybody out there in the audience. But this was basically, we could feel the new world order coming upon us, so we're just getting after it. And I guess, we pushed back. The health officer from Santa Cruz County did say on video, we were hoping keep the beaches closed, but the people are not willing to be governed anymore. And that's on video. I said, oh, Lord. So it was kind of discovery of me of how powerful we are together, just with a few people who know that they own themselves. They know that their rights or freedoms come from God, source, nature. They definitely don't come from government. And them trying to shut down the beach in May during the summer is just absurd. So that led to 40 weeks of free hugs that we did. You mentioned the Trader Joe's event, the maskless shopping went viral. That was called Cash Drop, actually. And it was basically exercising what the nature of who we are, our humanity, that we're allowed to freely travel. We're allowed to freely breathe. We don't need permission from you guys. And then we did 20 weeks of self-care. And so it became a spiritual awakening, actually, for the people that were participating in it. We would stay on the beach, until like 10:30 when the rangers would come around, and they would tell us, we can't have a bonfire, we can't have adult beverages, and we need to leave. And we would live stream them like this and say, is this your beach? And they say, no. I said, who does the beach belong to? The beach belongs to the people. Excellent. We're one of the people. And we would ask them, where do you get your authority? And for some of the people in the audience who might not have heard of Lysander Spooner, he wrote an essay called No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority in 1870. It's 150 years ago, proving that you're not bound to a contract that you didn't sign or you didn't consent to, and your grandparents or father or ancestors, they cannot bind you to a contract that you didn't consent to. So these were all big discoveries for me in the last 10 years. And then I would go to these events, and one of the great events I went to was in Acapulco in 2015, and I saw that double from 120 people and double by 2020. Right before the pandemic, there was like 1,700 people there, and I could see there's a worldwide awakening happening for freedom, self-ownership, and how it's not just the United States governments that's corrupt, it's all these governments. And so there were representatives from like 25 countries initially, and then it was like 30 and 40 countries, and these people come from all around the world looking for solutions. And so that's what the whole pandemic helped us do. It gathered us, because of that. I got to meet you, PGA, and some of the other people. So it basically kind of called the people who are being called to participate in this grand self-ownership awakening. And now we found each other, and now we get to have deeper conversations. And I'm just discovering that, it's up to us to think bigger, play bigger, get on the field, get in the arena, and go out there and make some strikes, maybe hit some home runs, get on base, to use the baseball analogy, but to get into the game, because in my experience, yelling at these politicians is not going to change the world. Even participating in the election fraud or election game doesn't seem like that's going to change the world at all. In fact, if anybody has read the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence was a letter declaring that you're free, that we're free. We're not asking permission from King George. We said, hey, King George, our rights come from God. We declare we're free. If you want some, come get some. And of course, these monarchs, that's what they do. They come and try to take the bullets and these kind of things. So yes, it's a beautiful time to be alive. I want to emphasize that the chains of statism are coming off. However, the empire doesn't want to let it go so easily. So it's up to us to use alternative means to do that. And I even forgot to mention in the pre-show that I started doing some stand-up comedy the last year and a half or so. And so I'm running a room up here in Northern California once a month and maybe twice a month. Because to change the world, it seems we need to change culture, which is through movies, comedy, music, art in general, and politics is downstream of these very creative endeavors, which is shocking why they don't put it in government schools, because they don't want to raise George Carlins and Bill Hicks and even Dave Chappelle to a degree, calling out these things, Steve Hughes, when you can just grab a microphone and start talking truth with humor. That is a superpower that the unrighteous ones don't want. So we're beginning to connect all these dots of the slave system. And one of the huge benefits is we got to meet each other. And I think, like you said, we met in Texas again. So we're getting connected, and it's just very exciting to see where this is going, because I believe we'll come out of the ashes, but the dark ones, they don't want us to. So it's going to be, I guess, the world is a stage and a drama. So we'll see how it all unfolds here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to build on that theme about humor. And it's something that I've mentioned in a recent podcast about laughing at tyrants. And, I borrowed that from James Corbett in, one of his classic videos, but I think it's so true. Like, we have to be able to use humor and, as you say, music and all these other forms that you communicate to people through either directly or indirectly to raise awareness. And it can be just, that funny joke that kind of, oh, wait, maybe that guy's got a point, and I remember Jim Brewer was one of those people, longtime comedian, very mainstream. And in the past few years, he's been coming out and kind of telling jokes and delivering truth, and especially during the masks and the shots and all that, really pointing out how the herd mentality was leading people to do some of these things, and how they were, hiding behind their masks, and how they treated others. And I think it's just a powerful medium, and it's something that we should all take more advantage of. I think about music, and we had Michael Jaguar on somewhat recently, and he's communicating truth through his music, and that's part of, what he's doing. So I think it's just something for everyone to think about. Whatever your path in life is, or whatever your talents are, there's always a way to influence change.
And I do want to bring up Jim Brewer, because if you guys have not seen his special called Somebody Had to Say It, we watched this, I think it was in 2022 or 2023, but he produced it in 2021 during the height of the scamdemic, and he calls it all out, and we're just laughing at the slave system, we're laughing at the tyranny. He did such a great job. So I believe that special will definitely immortalize him in civilization, because he did a great job, and just proof that 1 hour of a comedy show, this, his career built up to this moment. And at that moment, he probably was putting his life on the line, but he said, screw it, man, we're going to do it. And I got so much respect for him and all the people that are speaking out now. So that was part of the, like you said, the art and the culture creation, that's just like, wow, I didn't realize that it's that powerful. And then as my new movie director friend told me, and we're trying to, get this movie funded, he says it's movies that are most powerful. And he asked me, like, what's your favorite movies? And I said, well, Braveheart, Rocky, some of these ones. He says that's what really affects the culture, because billions of people see these movies. Like documentaries are good, and like I said, I want to make this documentary about what we did in Santa Cruz for the record, to document it, because we have all this raw video footage live streaming week in and week out. But in terms of actually changing the culture, it's the narrative fiction movies. So this is the movie that we're working on, and he has a script already, and we've spoke to investors, and we did a crowdfunding thing that didn't work, because I never did a crowdfunding campaign before. So we're learning. Culture's made of stories. If people believe in the Bible's a story. Myth, folk legend. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey, and he has a great 6-hour series with Bill Moyer from 1980s. And he basically said, this is the essence of it. He said, all the stories, all the religions, all the myths, they're about you. And they're trying to describe you. And I was like, whoa, that made some sense. So basically activating the inner champion, the inner freedom lover, the inner king, queen. These types of truths are beginning to happen all around the world. Just in this past year, I got to speak in England, Texas, Atlanta, California, and it's all about this kind of conversation, what these predators are doing to us, the digital ID, the CBDC. Like, humanity's finally getting together and saying, holy shit, guys, we need some solutions. And the best solution concept that I found is from Derek Bros and John Bush, which is exit and build. And that is, I'm not trying to change your system anymore. I'm going to exit the school systems, the medical system, the financial system, the media systems, all of it, healthcare systems, and we're going to build over here. Is it going to be harder? Yeah, it's going to be harder. But guess what? We don't need permission from you. And we can see examples of this. The Amish are one of the best examples. The Amish have independent food and water, and, they don't use technology per se, but they are free. And what happened in North Carolina recently, like the hurricane this past, was it 6 months ago? I don't know when it was now, but it's relatively recently. FEMA doesn't come and do anything for weeks and months, and the Amish come in there in like 2 weeks. They build like 40 homes, And I think this energy of we're not asking for permission any longer. We respect you guys, who are doing your job. You're on the lower level here. You're not part of the evil cabal, but you're getting paid with taxpayer dollars. And we're speaking to you as brothers and sisters of the human family. Leave us alone. We're building over here. These people are homeless, and we're going to build. And so this is the power of the video. As I mentioned in Santa Cruz, the fact we got to document some of these events was the most powerful thing, because once you can put somebody on video and they see themselves later, or maybe their neighbors see them and they're like, man, you were being a tyrant or something, then they get to have some chance for self-reflection. One of the times the park ranger came on the beach, and we were being super honorable, right? We realized that agape love is the way, that it's love of humanity. I don't know you, but we're all brothers and sisters of the human family. So I just send you agape love. We are being very kind to these people. She comes up and she's like, okay, no fire, no glass on the beach. And we always picked up after ourselves. We always, treated nature right because we love earth and life. So we always were cleaning up better than anyone. Anyway, she comes on and we say, do you know where our rights come from? And she says, yeah, the Constitution. And like 20 of us are just busted out laughing, because all of us have educated ourselves about self-ownership, about unalienable rights from the Creator. This is a known fact for over 250 years now, maybe more. So they just don't know. These cops, we send you peace and love. You people that just collecting paycheck, you don't have any desire for honor or morality or goodness, for humanity. You're just doing your job for a paycheck. We understand that's your position, but now it's about using this to educate each other and choosing our battles, but documenting what we're doing on video is so important. This conversation is so important. What you guys are doing, the audio, the video, somehow we can get a clip. Maybe there's a 60-second clip that somebody's going to capture, and it's going to take them on this whole different route. And they're saying, I knew it. I knew I was born free. I knew nobody had authority of me, because that's what I felt as a kid. I'm like, I just don't feel right asking permission to go to the bathroom. This just doesn't seem right. So these truths are rising, and yeah, it's beautiful that media allows this types of freedom and impact just by having conversations and creating art.
Couldn't agree more. And, one thing that really resonated with me that Jake and I have been talking about recently, it's like, people who aren't aware of what's really going on behind the scenes and, haven't gone down the different rabbit holes, like they're not your enemy. They're your neighbor. They're, your family, whatever. It's like, love these people, lead by example. Don't try to force feed them. Don't try to make them change. They have to do that self-discovery and change, at their own pace and at their own time. And that's something that we've really been hammering home. And, I know that you have a lot of thoughts about solutions and would love to, get your take on some of those, as you talked about, kind of getting on base versus the home runs. But I've been hogging the mic for the last few minutes. Jake, I know you've been sitting there quietly listening. I'm going to let you put some thoughts out there.
There's so much. I think one thing that really came out for me among all those comments that David just shared with us is that we are not alone. It's the old they live thing. There's a lot of people who have really raised their consciousness and discovered a community beyond just the norms in the last few years. And so I like to look back on the scamdemic and go, man, those are great times in a lot of ways. It's just like steel only gets forged through fire. And we went through a whole bunch of tests, and some people, like we've mentioned on the show many times, if you choose not to consent, life can be made very difficult. There can be a lot of friction. But again, we have our free will, and we're not contracting with these masters, and they will do their best to coerce us into consenting and just continuing with the system. And I feel that pull in my daily life every day. I had to bring home some bacon this morning just before we started recording. I got to go back out and do some more this afternoon. And that keeps me from exiting and building myself. But what we're trying to do is connect that consciousness and then get people past the idea that we're on the defensive and we need to just take action in our own lives and build our communities. So one thing I wanted David maybe to elaborate on a little bit is the whole idea of voluntarism, because I think a lot of people, they don't really understand that. And then they'll always ask the question, so, what do we do when there's a pothole in the road? And what do we do when there's a fire? So if you could just simply kind of explain how that ties in to solutions, that would be great.
Beautiful question. I had all these questions. How would society work without the government? I had these questions too. By the grace of God, I found a book by Murray Rothbard called For a New Liberty. When did he write that book? 1970. Okay. He explained all of it. He's one of the greatest economists of all time. I would say probably of the 20th century. So voluntarism is the idea that all relationships need to be voluntary. You own yourself, I own myself. It's based on the principle of self-ownership and then the principle of respect for self-ownership. Some people call it the non-aggression principle or do no harm. The agreement is this: I promise not to force you to do something, and you promise not to force me to do something. Agree? Agree. Okay, this seems to be the unifying principle for civilization. I know that's a crazy big thought or idea, but I've come to see that simplicity is the answer. And freedom of choice means that you're able to do anything you want as long as you don't harm my person, my property, and that includes upholding your contracts. So the contract would be a property, like an asset itself. But it's everything needs to be voluntary. And I'm working on a concept right now called body, temple, nation. And it's basically my body is my temple and it's my nation. My land, where I live is my nation. And I'm going to contract with other neighbors and nations because we're directly connected to source or creator or whatever one believes, but certainly not the city, county, state, and federal government who uses coercion and threats against me. And the question that I learned from Rick Martin was, by what authority are you doing this? You stay calm, you stay honorable, but it's now time that we speak up. And like you said, if you don't consent, they may kidnap you. That happened to me. Well, I'm almost shy to say, but in the last 5 years, I've probably been arrested 7 times. I had my car towed 9 times, all for different reasons. But I would say the majority of them were failure to identify. So I was just like, I'm just going to stay silent. And when a cop says something, because I know there's honest, sincere cops out there, they're just doing their job, and they say, we need your identification, and I just say, I invoke the Fifth Amendment, or something like that, right? They say, sir, just give us your name. If not, we're going to take you to jail. So once they start making these threats, or promises in that case, you have full honor to identify yourself. 3 or 4 of those times I shouldn't have gone to jail because I was totally just testing the water out, and that's what happens. Martin Luther King, I think, was arrested 30 times. Gandhi was arrested 27 times, sometimes for weeks and months on end, okay? This comes with the territory. But as long as you don't use violence, right, you never point guns at people, you don't bring weapons, we have the moral high ground. We stay honorable and noble. But God bless the people at Waco, rest in paradise, and Ruby Ridge. They're righteous to carry guns. They're righteous to have tools of self-defense. But when you're dealing with a tyrannical, violent organization called the city, county, state, and federal government, all they know is violence. So one great documentary that helped me understand this further, and this guy is in the same world, in these conversation with Martin Luther King and Gandhi. His name is Gene Sharp, and he made a documentary called How to Start a Revolution, and it goes through his life work where he discovered something really powerful. He said nonviolence is more powerful than violence. And you're like, well, how can that be? Well, I'll let you discover some of his work on YouTube and other places. But in essence, the bad people need our cooperation. And what Gandhi proved is that if you are willing to take the beating and not fight back physically, he says when someone is beating you, let's say these officers are beating you, and you're not fighting back, they get to see a mirror of themselves. So now they see that I am being a thug to this peaceful person, and this person is not even fighting back. So he said their respect for you increases, and how they see themselves changes also. So Gandhi said, you may take my life, but you'll never take my obedience. I said, oh, Lord. So there's a great movie in the 80s, like a 3-hour movie called Gandhi that goes through, I never heard about that, won all these Academy Awards, I think. So he showed us the path, and now it's up to us to use this with technology, right? With shows, clips, content, music, all the things we said, to incorporate that, because every human wants to be free and every moral human wants peace. So the question is, where does this exist? And back to the question of voluntarism, my biggest question of how a society would work without the government was resolved when I found the Threat Management Center out of Detroit, Michigan by Dale Brown. What's that? That is a private security organization, but he calls it a threat prevention organization, because if you call the cops, they always show up after the crime. His philosophy is you want to create conditions where crimes cannot happen. And how his business model works is he has homeowners pay him like $10 a month. And the reason is that in Detroit, if you call the cops, they show up, if at all, 4 hours later. So he has this one particular neighborhood, like 400 homes. They all pay him $10 a month. And if there's ever any suspicious people or there's a break-in, they call Threat Management Center. Shows up in 5 minutes. He already has body cams on his jacket because he's a private organization. He can get sued. He doesn't have qualified immunity like the cops do. So I actually went out and met him 2017 or so. I saw his organization. He came and spoke at my Education Options Expo in San Jose. And, we become friends, I would say. So I saw how the cops would work. And I said, okay, so we don't need these coercive monopoly organization. And it was very inspiring to me. I also found out there's more security officers, private security officers in the United States than public police officers, law enforcement. That was a very interesting fact. And then you brought up another point about the fire department. There's a guy named Tag Meyer on YouTube. He is Live Free Now, I think. Live Free Now. Sorry if that's not the one, but it is. He has a YouTube channel. He had a concept introduced to me in our interview titled Intentional Neighborhoods. Because I've heard the concept of intentional communities where we come together, we all put in some cash and we buy 50 acres and, we subdivide it and, we're all in this together. And then some other interviews I've done, I find out that humans, we're very interesting creatures, and sometimes we have conflict. And sometimes I want to be alone. And sometimes you guys want to be alone too. I want some solitude, and I don't want to see my neighbors. So he said intentional neighborhoods is this idea where you move in the same neighborhood, maybe 5 or 7 minutes of each other, but you have your homestead, I have my homestead. And he gave an example. One of his neighbors, not part of the neighborhood per se, was having a burn pile. The burn pile got out of control, and it wiped out some of Tag's crops and some of his structures. Did he call the government? He did not. He texted or called his mutual aid group, which is within 5 to 7 minutes of his neighborhood, his intentional neighborhood group, who have been preparing for this for, I think, about 7 years. I mean, he's ahead of the curve, really. They show up with a couple ATVs, water pumps, and they put out the fire. No lives lost. The house didn't, get burned. And so basically, it's private security. It's private fire departments. Everything's private and voluntary. You get in contracts and agreements with each other. And guess what? When some of those people who helped him put out the fire, if they're in an emergency situation and they text or call Tag, you think he's going to show up to help? Absolutely. And that's what they do. They would help build homes together. And I've still yet to go visit him in Kansas. I have met him, but he has a great, I'll see if I can remember the numbers. I think he has 70 people within his mutual aid group within like, let's say 10, 15 minutes of each other. 200 people within an hour, and I think he said like 2,000 people within like 2 or 3 hours. So they have a legitimate intentional neighborhood over there, and when the apocalypse happens, I think his community is going to be good. And that's a very powerful concept, because the question that you brought up was, well, what about these things? These are legitimate questions. Like I don't think coercion is correct, but what is the other option? So this is the whole new paradigm that I mentioned, is the new paradigm for freedom, justice, and civilization. Like, there's such big ideas, and I've been taught to the government schools to, like, play down here, play in the small arena. But I think God, nature, source, our ancestors, our progeny are inviting us to play a bigger game, because we know Gates and Fauci and the unrighteous ones, they're playing a huge game. They're playing for all the marbles on the table. And I think that's what I've discovered in the last, 7, 8 years doing some of this activism. Like, oh Lord, help me think bigger, help me play bigger, help me get the cash, because our children are asking for it. The generations, as the Native Americans did, the 7 generations after us, they would actually think this way. And we're just thinking maybe to next month or maybe next year. And these guys are plotting this entire trajectory of human civilization. Another interesting topic, I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. The resets. I'm starting to learn more about resets. Maybe there's been other resets in history. Tartaria is very interesting. I've seen some maps with Tartaria on it. I'm like, maybe these guys are playing such a big game that they're willing to wipe out everybody. And then, like in the early 1900s, there was like the orphan trains or the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Cabbage Patch Babies.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I've seen a couple, long videos on it. I'm like, oh man. So they might be playing so big, they're willing to wipe us all out or try and, repopulate or something. So anyways, I think they will lose. I believe that they will lose. I think love, truth, freedom, righteousness is on our side. But just like with the pandemic, I think Dr. Peter McCullough said it's like 17 million or 20 million deaths, from the procedures and from the jab. So that's more than a Holocaust, Holodomor. I mean, that's a big wipeout of humanity. So this whole reset, and this is why Derek calls it the people's reset, and John, the greater reset. Like, it is our reset. Every fiat currency ultimately goes to zero. And that's what the dollar is going to do. They can't crash it yet until they have a certain number of people on the digital ID or the CBDC. So they're between a rock and a hard place too. They're trying to bridge it, and until they get us locked in, if they crash it today, for example, humanity is so brilliant and we're such, lovers of life, we'll barter, we'll trade, we'll find solutions. So they need to get the RFID chip, as Aaron Russo said in his documentary. That's what they want to get us in there. And so it's like this, basically it is good versus evil. It's slavery versus freedom. It's a fight of like a race, who's gonna be liberated the quickest. And the solutions of independent food, water, energy, community, healthcare, education, community, I said clothing, right? These seem to be the core principles where if and when we do this and we help each other, the unrighteous ones are done, and they might be done forever. They've used this system for so long to enslave humanity, but now they're losing control of media and even cryptos. They're losing control of financial, and we can talk about that. But just these things all conflating creates the perfect storm for the world to begin to be free again and to not ask permission to exercise our God-given rights.
Amen to all of that. And I'll just answer the question you asked a minute or two ago, about the resets. There's so much work that's been done there, and some big channels like My Lunch Break is a good example of documenting the old world. John Levy is another one who's done great work documenting a lot of that. A lot of different thoughts on the meaning of the clear evidence that there was a different civilization. My personal take on it is, as our listeners have heard me say more than once, I personally believe that we're living in Satan's little season, referred to in Revelation 20. Long story short, the millennial reign already came and went. There was this period of peace and prosperity, and then there was the okay, now we'll let evil take over shortly, test humanity's faith, all of that. And, it kind of ties together all the various deceptions that are in our world. And, if that ends up being true, I think our time in this world of deception is short. But regardless, I think that it's really our job, as you say, to be our own heroes, as we talked about last week, saying heroes or zeros. We don't need to look at others as heroes. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. As long as we're raising awareness and building something better, than whether we are in the little season or not. That's more of a footnote, and some an area of interest, and certainly a deep rabbit hole to go down, and I can share some of those resources, but that's my personal take on it. There's a lot of ways to spin that, but Jake, I know you have some thoughts there. Why don't I let you chime in as well?
Well, just to follow up on whether it's Satan's in control, it's the little season, or whatever the case is, I think the key takeaway for me is that we're in an age of deception, and that was kind of the seed that germinated into this podcast. Was just, we got to be so careful where we spend, and that's another theme. We spend our attention and our time and of course the fiat currency or whatever we're using as currency. So we've got a minefield to navigate, and we're aware of that. And sometimes we feel like we're a bigger force than we might be, because you just go to the YouTube comment section on any kind of thing, like let's say measles recently, right? That's a good one. And all these people going, oh, those parents, those filthy parents didn't give their kids jabs. That's why these kids had measles and all that. And you're just, if you're awake to all this stuff, you're just like, really? So we're a minority, but this consciousness is growing, and people are increasingly aware of the deceptions. I love that you said mutual aid groups, right, David? Mm-hmm. So you just add an A to that. We can be our own MAGA, like mutual aid group of autonomy, right? Wow. It's our own MAGA. That's right? Great. Because people are leaving MAGA with all the crap that's going on. I think there's along the route, we do fall in. There are so many traps along the way. You can fall into personalities. You can fall into all sorts of habits. You can follow Pied Pipers in the wrong way. And we saw that, like RFK. So many people held him up as a hero. I think PJ and I doubt, David, you had any hope for that, because that's part of the system, right? So he's just the new face of the system. So it's difficult, and it can be sometimes confusing and maybe just a bit discouraging to realize that we're in a distinct minority, but this consciousness is just blossoming. And there's a lot of opportunity afoot. So speaking of action, maybe you could get into some things you're doing, maybe with homeschooling, and what other activities are you cooking up these days, David?
Yeah, so I think it's so important for people to realize that voting is important. But when I say voting, I say voting with your dollars, because money is our life force energy. And if I understood you correctly, Jake, getting the bacon is getting the money, right? So these dudes have tricked us. So we trade our time for money, and time is all we have, right? Like, we can always get more money, but we can't get more time. So today, end of April 2025, I'm grateful to be here with you. Today's the best day of my life. It is now. There is no tomorrow. There is no next year. I pray we all live another 50 years, and God help us, we will. But all I have is this moment. And I have a moment right now. So to understand the significance of this moment, the gratitude that I feel in this moment, and to use this as a life force energy that wherever I take my dollars now, I try to be more conscious with my dollars. And whoever I give my money to, I'm giving them my life force because it took me time to get this money. So I'm giving them my life. And I think that's one of the spiritual secrets of money that they've kept down for so long. I listened to an audiobook, or I guess a book, I think it's from 1917, maybe 1903, titled Money Loves Me. And there's other things I'm listening to from like the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a spiritual awakening happening, and they were talking about it in the like 1890s, 1900s. And then guess what happened? Those next 10, 15 years, the school system, the financial system, the war system. So there was like good and evil rising, and evil took over the newspapers and the magazines and these kind of things. So I'm reading this from like 1903, and I could feel the spiritual energy in this guy. And I'm like, wow, so that's what's happening right now. And we're referring to Tartary, these other civilizations, like they're going to try to do it again, I feel. That's what they're trying to do. There's this big event, this big, depopulation event. So it's up to us as leaders, men and women, to find your role in the team. We're all part of Team Freedom, Team Agape Love, Team Righteousness, Team Morality, and making a show is great. Why? This is evergreen content. Also, I recently purchased a beehive, so I'm learning to build a beehive and get honey and learn about these types of things. I planted some fruit trees in the last few years, and some peach trees and apricot trees, and learn about this, learn about the soil. So school screwed us up so royally because we think everything's separated, everything's in subjects, right? And it's just like, oh, what am I going to study? All is one, right? All subjects go back to life, your life and my life. And this is health, and this is relationships, and this is abundance, and this is vitality, this is communication, language. So it begins to see how simple all this is. And the great quote, which was, I think from Einstein, it says, any fool can complicate a matter, but it takes a genius to simplify one. So I start to get back to the simplicity, back to the age of deception requires complexity, but the age of truth is simple. So just getting back to voting with our dollars. And then what I'm really excited about, and I want to put this in here, is making a movie about these types of solutions. So I talked to this movie director. He's already made 40 movies. He's 50 years old. He's in his prime. All we need right now is in between 80 to 250 grand. We can even do it for 150. But of course, the more money, the better. And we're going to put these concepts into a story. Not like Braveheart, fight the king and die. We're going to be exit and build. These phrases. He literally said, he says, I have not heard of a better solution than exit and build, voluntary living or voluntarism, objective morality, intergenerational freedom, self-directed learning, all these things we learned on the left side of our brain. This guy is a true artist. He does the writing, he does the music scoring, he does the editing, he does the choreography, the videography. This guy is a savant, and I've got him on the phone with over 15 people. Nobody wants to put the money in. I've talked to some people worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they won't throw us a shekel. And I'm like, oh, Lord. So I guess we're just going to have to get the money ourselves, and maybe we'll try another campaign. But I think it's basically just increasing our entrepreneur skills, increasing our marketing skills, because for 80 grand, we can do a little, B movie. And for 250, we can make a decent movie, make it look like a $1 million or $2 million movie. So the idea is to make a visual story with characters that you love. We can, you can take a look at the treatment or the slide deck. Go to sacredlifemovie.com or email me, because we have the solution. The solution are these things. I mentioned the Murray Rothbard. We have the logic. Now we need the art. The artist is the visionary. The artist sees the future before it comes, and that's why Tesla talked about frequency, vibration, and energy. He knew that, but he's 100 years before his time. Lysander Spooner, 150 years before his time. Leonardo da Vinci. So the artists can see it in their imagination. And remember, imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge is only as what is known now. Imagination is all that ever is and all that ever could be. The artist brings that to the forefront so we can see it, and then we're like, okay, I see it now. I see how we can do intentional neighborhoods, independent food, water, energy, these types of solutions, and then that will spark more of this grassroots scaling up of these solutions. Because, hey, I appreciate RFK speaking out about the jabs for years. He said something about the measles, vaccine in recent months, and I'm like, he's playing politics, whatever. My hope is not in the politics. My hope is in you, the audience, the leaders, the ones that are going to build the world, the exit and build. And now I found a way to support people. So, for example, I like how Del Bigtree, has been bringing up the facts about the jab and the agenda. He's not full voluntarist yet, but he's a good dude. I've had dinner with him, and he's a freedom of choice guy in my experience. So I endorse actions more than I endorse people. It's like, do you support RFK or you support Trump? Hey, Trump freed Ross Ulbricht. That was a great thing. Ross Ulbricht from the Silk Road was in there for 12 years for making a website. He didn't harm anybody. So I appreciate that about Donald Trump. Now it's time for him to free Roger Ver. Bitcoin Jesus, who was facing, all this time. So finding the good actions to endorse. I think this is also part of the new civilization. So if somebody messes up, I say, I don't support that action, but they did something good over here. I support that action. That way we're not divided over the petty things when most of us are on the same team. Most of us don't believe in the forced jab. So if somebody happens to like some Democrat or like some Republican or whatever, fine. That's your business. I'm a voluntarist. I've done my research. I realize I can't be bound to a contract I never agreed to. Now, sometimes I will participate in government stuff. Maybe they send me something in terrorism. I got to sign it, all rights reserved or whatever. But how many battles are there to fight on the earth? So many battles. So I'm choosing the battle of the school system. Get the kids out. I'll help you get a diploma. If you're 14 years old, 15 years old, we'll get you out. We'll get you into a community college, or I had another good testimonial. One of my graduates graduated trade school for electrician, and the mother messaged me. She says, he's doing really well. He's making good money, and pretty soon he's going to start his own construction business. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So that's one way. And then now, through a strange occurrence, I got to meet this movie director. And so now I'm getting into the movie business, right? So find something you love. Find something that you care about. And I respect what you're doing, Jake. Hey, we got to put bacon on the table. We got family and friends, relying on us. It ain't easy to be a man. So let's take care of that. Let's take care of our monthly nut. And then let's have a 6-month goal. Let's have a 2-year goal, a 5-year goal. Because according to Martin Armstrong, he says the currency, the US dollar, is going to collapse by 2032. And Martin Armstrong is one of the great financial forecasters of all time. He created this AI called Socrates that the federal government came to him and said, give us that AI or it'll put you in jail. He went to jail for like 10 years because he wouldn't give them the software. And he just got out in recent years. He's in his 70s and just a visionary. Anyways, he says his software predicts that it's going to collapse in 2013. So 7 years is short time and it's long time. So begin to work now. Have a long term, even if you put 5 years. It's going to take time, but this is another conversation about AI. Have you guys played with AI? It's like, wow, AI is going to just automate everything, and it's going to be how clear can you think? What type of thinking do you do? Because it's almost as quick as how fast can you think it? How fast can you say it? And now you can have a script. Now you can have a song. Now you can have a cartoon. And it's blowing me away. And again, it's kind of had me slow down. I had to go into my cocoon for a while and just like think like, okay, where is this going and how can we use this to empower humanity, empower ourselves, create win-win relationships, because that's a key principle of voluntarism. If it's good for you and it's good for me, great, let's do it. If it's not, then we're not going to move forward. So AI is very interesting. I'd be curious to hear what you think, PJ and Jake, if you played around with AI at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to answer that question directly, I think it's like anything else, it's a tool. I mean, if you think about a knife can be made
Yep.
to, make dinner and something healthy, or a knife can be used to kill someone. Like it really depends on the intention of using that tool. And certainly I think that AI is part of like the rapid development of AI is part of the transhuman agenda. And there's patents by Microsoft out there that basically paint a dystopian world where we're all, giving it activity to earn our little token. And, there's all these different variations where we could quickly enter, Gattaca territory, or name your favorite dystopian movie. But I think it really goes back to a theme that we've had in our show, and I've heard you really drilling down in this conversation is, where are we paying our attention? Where are we devoting our time? We had a conversation a few weeks ago about the beast system always takes, right? That's all it does. It takes, and it'll take as much as you give it, right? So we can be in this world, but we don't have to be of this world. But there is that balance of, how much time do we dedicate to that versus doing something that's really good for humanity and building a different future. So it really is a delicate balance. And, one thing I'd love to hear your take on, David, and I want Jake to also be able to chime in here too, but what are your thoughts about the balance between, you mentioned governmental systems and, there's a lot of movement behind becoming a U.S.
Mm.
national and, officially unregistering as being a citizen. That's a fine line. I've heard it said, in fact, a guest that we're having on soon once said after a greater reset event, I remember sitting down with this gentleman and he said, all that works until it doesn't. But I'd love to hear your take on, if you've gone down that rabbit hole and where you think that balance is. But Jake, again, I'm stealing the mic, so let me let you chime in.
That's perfectly okay, PJ. The conversation's going great. I'll just chime in a little bit about AI. I use it in my work. I do a lot of photography and videography. And what David emphasized about the power of imagination, I think is the key when it comes to AI. We can use it as a tool as long as we don't let it replace our imagination. If we get to that point where we're just saying, make me this, make me that, or visualize this and then execute based on what the Borg mind in that chip does, then we're number one outsourcing our creativity, and at the same time we're also just losing the exercise of our imagination. Right? We're not exercising that muscle, and that's what makes us unique. And we've touched on this. The power of storytelling in you're trying to get the funding to make a movie because the story, the narrative, to coin a phrase, wonder where that came from, is so important, right? Everything's about the narrative, and we tell stories and we enjoy them. So that's my take on AI. I do use it for like post-production for photography, and I'll use it to spit out a transcript of this podcast, and then I could edit with using just the text. So if I wanted to move a paragraph around, I could move the paragraph and the video with that and just place that in a different order. If I was going into the file, it would be a lot different. So AI can be useful, but we just need to be mindful of not allowing it to replace our capacity for joy and surprise and imagination.
Yeah, no, this is beautiful. One of the futurists that I've seen, Gerd Leonard, talks about how with technology we become more technical and less human. So the things in the future are going to be more human, right? So human interaction is going to be more valuable, because when you're seeing someone on social media It could be an AI model now, right? And I just saw this article about the study that the University of Zurich did, I believe, and they un no they told they joined a Reddit chat forum, and they didn't tell the Reddit people that they were using AI bots to persuade opinion. So what happened is the AI bots went in there, looked at each of the real humans, searched their past, and then use that data to then persuade them towards one way of thinking. And the conclusion was that if you're unaware that there's AI bots out there trying to persuade you, you will be persuaded. So what I kind of got from that was truth verification is going to increase in importance and urgency. So the question is, who is this person chatting with me, and are they even real, and what are they trying to do, where are they taking me? So it goes back again to the simplicity of that truth is the real thing. Like, we want the truth, and if we're being persuaded, understand we're being persuaded. You know, if we're watching a Hollywood movie, and I can see it now because my director friend has been keeping me up on game on these movies, and he's like, oh, you see that? Like, everything is so subtle. It's programming our subconscious mind. And I was watching a movie the other day, and within 5 minutes, it was trauma. It was like multi-personality disassociation. Like, I was just like, we're not watching this. Turn this off, because I could feel it. It was creeping into my soul. And I'm such a simple guy. I'm from a small town, mountain town, you know, Mount Shasta. And that's where I was raised. So it's like, I just am very simple. And I went to San Jose, got a business degree, got complicated in life, and, you know, these things. And then it's basically coming back to the simple mind. And I heard a song from Frank Sinatra recently. It's called Young at Heart. It's basically, if you're young at heart, you know, you're alive and you're open and everything is beautiful and wonderful. So that's what I want to say is about the importance of truth verification, knowing that the bad people, as you said, PJ, it's a tool. AI is a tool. It can be used for good or for evil. I agree. That's 100% correct. I think that's a correct stance. And it's up to us now to know that there are predators out there who are preying on us, preying on our energy, life force, our children. And I just came across this book. I guess it's been about a year now. The Engineering of Consent. And it was a very hard book to come across, but this is Edward Bernays in the 50s, who he already wrote Propaganda and Crystallizing Public Opinion in the 20s. 30 years later, he puts together his A-team, and they basically say how they're using deception and persuasion to have us consent to anything. And he's the guy who, you know, got smoking into the feminist movement for women, his empowerment, and bacon and eggs in the morning when that really wasn't a thing. So they are using deception to get your consent. And if we all can realize and remember that our consent is our superpower, and all you have to say is, if you're being, you know, pushed into something, you don't have to scream and yell. You don't even have to have a weapon. You can just say, I prefer not to. And then you let the person reveal their violence. And if you have a camera, do it like this. I've noticed if you do this to code enforcers or law enforcement, they don't like it. So you got to hold it low, you know, secretly record them, or have some, you know, dash cam or some other secret footage. But we must expose the bad actors in our community with honor, because we come with peace and integrity. We want peace. And I think once they realize that they're outnumbered, we are not alone, as you said, Jake. We outnumber them so vastly, it's insane. And Larkin Rose has a great video called The Tiny Dot that shows how vastly outnumbered they are. It is insane. So it's about uniting around a unifying principle. I believe it's freedom of choice, aka self-ownership, respect for self-ownership. It's so simple. I think this idea will go viral as we all learn to promote, market, get these things out there. Comedy, music, film, podcasts, you know, merch, all the things, memes. You know, it takes an army to build this new paradigm that is going to make the state obsolete, because it's just better. You know, I came across this word that I liked, or I don't know if I just came up with it, but it's like, let's blockbuster them. You know what Netflix did to Blockbuster? They got blockbustered, right? They just got made obsolete. There was no protest to get Netflix to conquer. They just blockbustered Blockbuster, right? They made them obsolete. I think that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of people getting out of the school system, so I feel a lot of hope there. We want to raise up the new leaders, just like us. You know, we're still young guys, but you know, we're not going to be young forever, but we'll stay young at heart. But the new generations are coming. You know, there's new, 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds and 17-year-olds that they're just coming up. They're just like, what's going on? And if they're blessed to have freedom-loving, peace, moral parents, they had hit the jackpot, because that's what this future is going to be about. It's going to be about honor and morality and goodness. And even if you have no money at all out there, if you're a good human and you have sincere intentions and you have a decent work ethic, you're going to be fine. Find the community. You find the people. Go reach out. This is probably where the comfort zone is. You got to go out and say hello. Introduce yourself. Meet people. PJ and I were at the one of the bonfires out there in Austin, and we also met other places. But we're out there meeting people. You know, we realize the awakening is not going to happen in our home. It's going to be out there meeting people, expanding our leadership, developing our own language and compassion and patience. There was a quote, I think it was Gandhi. He said, "If you lose patience, you've lost everything." I said, wow. So that's what this is about. It's having faith. It's having patience, knowing that there's good things coming, knowing that when you plant a seed, the fruit doesn't come up. You got to wait 5 years. And I've seen that happen. And so I invite the audience to begin planting things, get your hands in the soil. And, it's been a few years for me now, but I didn't know anything, but Jack Spurko helped me. This was at the Exit and Build Land Summit 3 years ago. He said, if you want to get started, go in your backyard, look for the first piece of dirt and plant something in that dirt. And now you have a garden. Okay, it's that simple. Just get started, and then you can join different associations. You can join different groups online, in person. In person, I think, is where the power is going to be. It's going to be about localism. So, yeah, some of these ideas that I think people can benefit from, and understand that we're on the winning team, and it's just about us expanding ourselves, getting out there, meeting new faces, building trust, being honorable, right? As I said, the honorable people will have a place to go, but the dishonorable people or the immoral people, they're going to get ostracized, and I don't want that for anybody. But if you're not seeking your heart and goodness and integrity, then this is the game that you pick, right? Everybody has a choice, and you can't force people to, drink or do anything, it's freedom of choice. So choose goodness, choose righteousness, and I think you guys, audience members out there, we're going to be okay. Let's just keep choosing the right path and morality, and we're all going to win long term.
I agree, and I love that terminology of let's blockbuster the controllers or the dark forces. Like let's build positive things. Let's build community. Everything that you just really succinctly summarized, that feels like a really great closing point for this conversation. I know we all have busy lives and other things to do today, so and maybe we'll just have to have you on again in the future, because there's so much we didn't even cover in this episode. But again, thank you so much for joining this podcast. Just an amazing conversation, a lot to build off in the future. I'll just let Jake any parting thoughts before we let David go with the rest of his day.
I just think our audience needs to know that it's in your power to blockbuster them, or to be like Facebook and MySpace them, whatever it is. But it's not in the system. We're opting out of the system, and the whole point is to exit and build, like David emphasized today. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful, and I do hope we can have you back another time, because this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Keep up the good work. I want to acknowledge you guys for your leadership and courage to do this. People don't realize how much effort is required. We had some tech challenges in the beginning and you pivoted, and this is what it takes. You know, we have something important to discuss and to connect with, and that's what it's about. It's about adjusting and finding the new path. When one door closes, another door opens, and that's what's happening. Humanity's the traditions have been closing on us, and now there's going to be new traditions, and it's up to you and me to create them with intention and with love and total liberation. I believe we will win. So I'd love to join you guys again. I think this conversation is just going to become more important in 6 months and a year. So yeah, let's keep building and let's link up again and have another conversation. And I'm so grateful to be on your show and send a bunch of love to you guys and to your audience. So let's do it again.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, David, and thanks to our viewers for tuning in. A lot of other exciting conversations we have planned in the future. Of course, we're gonna take David up on that offer and check in with him later this year or whenever the time is right. And until then, stay tuned and keep building.
You just have to flood a country's public square with enough raw sewage. You just have to raise enough questions, spread enough dirt, plant enough conspiracy theorizing that citizens no longer know what to believe.